Hello, and like Jenny said, I'll be talking to you about what we've done on the RSC this year and how I represented all of you. It's been a relatively slow year in the RSC. We had an in-person meeting in Washington, D.C. in November. We had a joint meeting with the RDA board in April of this year. And as usual, beyond the in-person meeting that we had in November, we have 3 asynchronous meetings over the course of the year. Each one of them had a public session. In 2025, there won't be an in-person meeting of the RSC. We're going to be fully asynchronous. I strongly invite all of you to join the public sessions. There's always something interesting that's happening there. There are certain changes in the RSC membership. Damian Eisminger finished his term as the lead of the technical team, and he's been replaced by Chris Holden. The ORDAC and EURIG representatives were appointed for second terms, and also Salboj was appointed for a second term as the EURIG backup. We have many position holders who are finishing their first terms. The translation team liaison, but as I said, in any case, it would be staying on, whether he wants a second term or not, on the translations. He'll be staying on as the EURIG backup. The examples editor, the education or orientation officer, the secretary, and the NARDAC representative are all finishing their first terms at the end of this year. And Charlene Chow, the Water Community Engagement Officer, is finishing up her second term. And there, keep an eye out for a call of interest if anyone would like to take on that role. The work that we do in the RDA Steering Committee basically breaks down to fast tracks, proposals, community resources, protocols, working group, and education. There weren't very many fast tracks this year. There were only 3. 2 were started by the translation working group and 1 by the RSC secretary. These are minor changes, mainly wordsmithing. So they go through very quickly. A lot of proposals this year. And for those of you who are on the editorial committee, a new proposal just came through as Jenny was talking. So look for that in Basecamp. It'll be coming your way later today. There was a proposal by the Religions Working Group about the way we talk about names of corporate bodies. At this point, until now, there hadn't been a way that if an unofficial name appears on most publications, you could still prefer the official name. And this proposal allowed the option of preferring the official name, but the real implication of this proposal was the Religions Working Group that had looked very specifically for where RDA was Christian-centered and didn't allow space for other religions was told, look for the wider implications. You're looking at the way religious corporate bodies are named, but basically what you're talking is about the way any corporate body is named. So don't just think about religions. Use religions as the lens through which you look at RDA and see where it doesn't meet international needs. And now their proposal was basically accepted, but they were told to look in the wider context and find the appropriate place in the toolkit to put this new condition option set. Another thing that touched on religions was the new definition for fictitious entity and non-human entity. If you had been in the public session of the November meeting, you would have heard this discussion. There was a clause that was proposed by NARDAC that non-human entities should exhibit human characteristics, which is a problem both for animals and also for deities. That's a whole theological discussion that I don't think RDA ever wanted to get into, but thankfully, both the technical team and the examples editor said, no, we would prefer not having that. So the proposal was approved, but that clause that NARDAC wanted to put in was not included. So your non-human entities don't need to exhibit human characteristics to be considered non-human. There was a proposal to revise the definition of aggregating work, and aggregates guidance. The proposal that came across my email just now, it follows up on that, saying that we discussed earlier today about the dual language naming of corporate body and place, which was a proposal that wasn't really accepted. Then it went to a rapid action group, which included several Europeans, including Hannes, to talk about how when a corporate body or a place has a name in more than one language, but it's not a parallel. It's not like we see on the sign where it's the same name but in two languages, but the name itself is composed of words from two languages. How do we deal with that? It was a lacuna that came up from ORDAC, from the Oceania region, but it's something that's very applicable to us in Europe also. And a proposal from the last meeting, which followed up on a change in MARC, had to do with numerals, started out with numerals that had to do with regnal names. And then when we found examples that it wasn't necessarily a regnal name, those also came from Oceania, we expanded it to numerals associated with given names. Originally, you were supposed to be using Roman numerals, something like that, and that doesn't work for every script or for every language. So we widened it so that you could use other ways of recording that information. As I said, it followed up on a discussion that was happening in the MARC community about changing the XOO subfield B and its requirements. Community resources, I'll repeat what I said last year. The technology is available for communities that are not translating the full toolkit, but do want to include local policies in a way that meshes with the toolkit. You can apply to put your information into the community resources. It works in any language, any script, and it's a way to link in the instructions and your policies so that your community doesn't need to go outside the toolkit to find out what you're doing, and you don't need to pay to do a full translation to be able to put in policy statements. So it's a good middle ground. We also have a new protocol we discussed, which is between the RSC and the BibFrame community as represented by the Share Family, Share VDE Advisory Council. It was approved by the RSC in April, and then the draft was sent to the BibFrame community for their approval. Our education officer also created some resources for those of us who teach RDA. There's a template for teaching RDA, which can be translated into any language. It's a very, very big slide deck. Anyone who wants to use it is invited to take the slides that they need, work with them in the original English, or translate them into any language you're interested in. And there's a short 2-page leaflet on tips for teaching and training people to use RDA. These are all oriented to official RDA, not to the original RDA. Several active working groups, the Extent Working Group, which has basically finished up its work and is now working on creating proposals for the RSC to discuss and vote on. The Joint RDA Board and RSC Working Group on Artificial Intelligence, which, spoilers, I'll tell you about tomorrow in detail. The 2 working groups are now advisory groups. The Religions and RDA Working Group, which it had been a task and finish working group, the RSC decided that religions was too big a topic to have an end date on or to continually push off the end date, so it became an advisory group. which is not quite, it's not a standing working group, but it also doesn't have a hard and fast end date. And our newest working group, the Archives Working Group. And we have discussed the creation of a music working group, and we expect to see a draft of terms of reference and possible members for our July 2025 meeting. Our standing working groups, as usual, are the Examples, Technical, and Translations Working Group. Translations Working Group is very heavily European, and that's why the annual translators meeting is always linked to the EURIG meeting, because we're the bulk of the translators. Our Extent Working Group and the AI Working Group are task and finish. We do have hard and fast end dates. The new Archives Working Group has had a small number of meetings. They did approve their terms of reference, and we have 6 members of that working group, 4 of whom are from EURIG libraries, 2 from Switzerland, 2 from Israel, and the chair of the group is from Switzerland, and of course there are 2 Americans. They've recently started a survey of the use of RDA in archives. So we know what's out there, and then they can start discussing how to bring the rest of the archival community closer to the RDA standard and what lacuna there are in RDA, which would need to be filled so that archives could use the standard. The editorial committee, my right hand, the people who help me know whether EURIG is behind something or not. As you see, most of the members are ex officio, so there's always space for new members. Thurston has very graciously agreed to serve a second term, and our newest members are in purple. If anyone is interested in joining, what I do is when we get a proposal, I put it up, ask for discussion, ask for advice, and then that's how I can represent EURIG at the RSC meetings. Huge thanks to Saboj for preparing the next 2 slides. These are the translations that are currently in process. Some of them have already been finished. A small list of full translation, a much larger list of partial translations. That's the translation of the RDA registry. If you're looking to create an application profile and you don't want to use codes, you want to use terminology that your catalogers will understand, it pays to look at the RDA registry and see if you would like to translate the terms so that you can use it in your own teaching and training and in creating an application profile. Instead of having to use the code for extent, my community can write hekif because we have a translation of the registry. And what Hannes was talking about before, about using multilingual. If your translation is in the registry, you saw on his slides that the terminologies he had in different languages, they all came from the registry. So it's a way of getting yourself on the map and making it easier to create materials for your own community. And here's the map of where we have full and partial translations in Europe. We have not created new proposals within EURIG since the last meeting. Hopefully, before the next meeting, we'll have created a few proposals. There are some that I'm in discussion with EURIG members about, and today there were some suggestions of ideas that we could do as proposals. Basically, any religions working group proposal is basically a EURIG proposal in any case. But if you have more ideas for fast tracks, for full proposals, for discussion papers, talk to me. Let's make it happen. Here's how you can get in touch with me: by email, social media. Grab me over the course of today or tomorrow. It's all good, but I need to know what you need so that I can properly represent you, because I'm just your mouthpiece, and I'm very proud to do that. Thank you.